Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And I quickly want to say this that if you like something, whether that is this show or my guest's comic, who I'm going to introduce in 1 second here, or anything that you enjoy, you need to really go out and support that. I personally don't care if it's corporate, independent, or a combination of the two things. But again, if you like something, you need to support it because without support and economic support, this stuff doesn't get made, or at the very least, it gets made slower. But that is enough of my PSA for the day right there, because I have with me comic creator John Dexter. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. This is the first time we've been on together, so it's pretty cool, exciting. Hopefully, we get some viewers here. I've been putting the word out as best I can.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on. A lot of people watch this show at all different hours and all different methods, both live and on replay. But you currently have a Kickstarter going on with Dime Story Detectives. And I know that you're about 93% as we're filming this and we're live right now. And it's an interesting book from what I've read about it, what I've seen, but some people are hearing about it for the very first time, and it is a brand new comic from you. So, what is the basic premise of the book for those who are saying, hey, what is this story about?
Yeah, so Dime Store Detective, it's definitely a different comic that you're used to. It's a noir style comic, but with a supernatural element to it. It's about this detective in North Georgia, Athens, more specifically towards the Appalachian Mountains, that comes upon this crime scene of this woman who's nude and hanging from this tree. And she's the third victim of this serial killer. And she just so happens to be left on over the same spot that the detective's uncle and father buried multiple bodies 40 years ago. And there's a connection there. And what it is, we find out as the story goes along. And then we flash back to the story of the detective when he's 8 years old. We kind of go, anything that's in the present day is in color, and anything that takes place in 1981 is in black and white, which to differentiate for the readers when we go forwards and backwards. But it's the detective when he's 8 years old, and he grows up in this family of moonshiners. There's four generations of it in the Appalachian Mountains, and we open up where this rival moonshining group, a gang, moves in their territory and tries to push them out, and it erupts in this bloody rivalry. And there's an evil entity connected to it all that is shown throughout the series, and it's going to be 8-issue series if we get funded. Knock on wood, we're 93% funded, so I think we'll get there. We still have 9 days to go, and so it's got a lot of mystery to it. You know who the serial killer is, what the story is with this evil entity. So it's really exciting. It's really thrilling, and if people just give it a chance, I think they'll really enjoy it.
So, we're going to dive into it, I promise, because it is an interesting book and there's a lot of stuff in play, for lack of a better word here. And I'm picking my words very carefully because I have my own theories on what's going on here. But this is not about me at the present moment, at least. But where did this idea come from? Because crime books have been around, noir books have been around, but this book reminds me of like the movie In the Line of Fire and the comic book The Bronx Kill, and it's in that
Yeah.
vein. And I'm picking, I think, two things that some people know about. And so, where did this idea come from? Because you got a cop who obviously has a very interesting history and may or may not have been swayed one way or the other. And then, well, now something has come from his past. And it's a very interesting premise. And it goes deeper, and you're really going into the bullpen, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, yeah. So I originally wrote it many, many years ago, but it took place in the Iraqi War, where they accidentally go into this cave and unleash this spirit, this evil entity that doesn't really have an origin. I kind of try to keep that ambiguous as I can, if it's a demon, an alien, an entity, what it is, because I think it's better when the readers kind of can piece it together themselves and come up with their own. I remember when I watched It back in the 80s with the TV miniseries, and it was kind of ambiguous. And then when I read the book many, many years later, they gave him an origin. Now, Stephen King was doing a lot of coke then. So if you've ever read it, you'll know what the heck is the deal. It was like an alien that crashed here, and there's a turtle and stuff. So it is a very trippy book. And I was a little disappointed because I liked it better when it was kind of ambiguous and you kind of got to, there was that question hung in the air. So I try to approach that with my evil entity, where it comes from, and let the readers kind of make up their own mind. So, but like I said, so that was kind of how it started. I didn't really like it. And then recently I was listening to a podcast about the Dixie Mafia. Now they're still around apparently. I mean, I'm sure not as, hardly much of a power anymore, but they were really prevalent in the late 60s in the South. And they were drug runners, they were hitmen, they were pretty bad dudes. If you ever watched the movie Walking Tall, that's the Dixie Mafia that attacks Buford T. Puster, whether you watched the original or the one with The Rock. But so they're real gang, really bad guys. So the podcast was about the son of a hitman for the Dixie Mafia. And the son grew up that even though his dad had murdered many, many people, to the son, he could do no wrong. And he put him up on this pedestal. And that's kind of where I got my idea of how I wanted to approach the main character and his father and that aspect to it. The father is, in this story, the father is the notorious McIntyre brothers, who I've created, where they're feared in Athens, Georgia, this moonshining family. And the son just thinks his dad is the greatest person in the world, but they've been vilified for 40 years because of the events of this moonshine rivalry with all the deaths that took place. So the detective is kind of carrying the torch of his family, saying, hey, you guys don't know the truth. My father isn't this horrible murderer. And so he is going to do his best to kind of clear his father's reputation. And he's been kind of at it over the years. And now we pick up where this murderer has left his latest victim over the burial grounds that the detective's father and uncle have buried all these multiple bodies many years ago. So there's definitely a connection there. And as the story goes along, we find out exactly why.
Yeah, and let's even dive into this a little bit, because obviously something happened and there was a rivalry, and obviously this moonshining family gang is not good. And I don't think anybody here is gonna, say that they're the saints, and that, lack of a better word, but there is something that is lacking. The other side of the story is lacking. And what's happened is that we have Detective Donald McKinder,
McIntyre.
Correct me if I get the name wrong.
McIntyre. It's it's McIntyre. It's a take on the old 1940s TV shows where they would, instead of saying dude, they say, hey, Mac. I don't know if you're familiar with the old movies from the 40s, but that was kind of a saying. And also he's named after this guy that I went to high school named Troy McIntyre, who was a really great guy. Would have done big things in his life, but unfortunately his life was cut short by cancer. So it's kind of a tribute to him, plus a nice little play on the old, because it is a noir, style, the bogies and stuff.
Yeah, so to even go further into that, because obviously he's a detective and he is a hard-nosed workaholic, the type of detective that is the chain smoking, always on the beat type of detective.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he doesn't have any friends really in, the department. He's not playing politics, and he's sort of, I guess, what you call major cases to some degree, I think is a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is this like building him out? Because his character is absolutely fascinating, because you have somebody now who, it's been clear that this guy is now pushing 50s. He's seen everything. He's pretty much going to be pushed out of the force, is kind of the vibe you get. And he also has this dark history. I mean, also he might have a warped sense of justice. He might have a warped sense of criminality as well, because justice and criminality are really two either side of the coin, but it's the same coin. And so, what was this like really creating him? Because there's a lot of stuff embedded into this character
Yeah.
that is complicated to parse out.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely a complicated figure to a certain extent. The top brass hate him because he goes against this the old Southern mentality, the elites, the people that kind of make their own rules and to break them, and he is been a thorn in their side for most of his time on the force. The reason he's still on the force is he's the best detective that they have, and he's like you said, he spends night and day on the case, and he's got the best record of anybody on there. So they can't get rid of him. But City Hall absolutely hates him, and not to give too much away further down the series, but there's reasons. There's kind of this cabal, if you will, of the old Southern money that kind of runs the city in this story that he is fighting against, and he takes no prisoners. And yeah, like you said, he's not afraid to bend the rules in order to do what's right, because justice has not served him and his family very well throughout the 40 years.
And also he steps on other people's territories and their
Yeah,
turf, and even forgetting all the city hall. If there's another officer and it's his crime scene,
yeah.
this guy sort of steps on that, and
Oh
that
yeah, yeah.
irritates.
There's a history with him and the other detective that goes back many, many years. The detective, as you find out with the story, so Detective Mackett, our main character, he had a relationship with the the guy that he has a rivalry with. He had a relationship with her for a while, and because of his family history, he had to break things off. And his rival there, Frank, in the story that you meet in the very beginning, is infatuated with her, kind of took her under her wing, but she wants nothing to do with him. She still, and Mac and her still have feelings for another. So that relationship kind of develops. She's trying to get ahead in the department, and he's going the opposite way.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. And then obviously, even to go further into that family history, obviously, his father, Matt Kinder's father is obviously this bootlegger, and there's a lot of history, and there's also a very interesting perception that this detective has of his father and of what happened and the events that happened. And obviously, you're in the South, and not to get too deep into geography, but I live in the North. I think you're in Michigan. I don't think you're going to
Yeah,
mind me saying
yeah,
that. But Michigan and Georgia, or where I'm at in Connecticut, is a very different place than Georgia.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's very interesting, even with that and that entire history. And so, what is that like to throw that history in here? Because that's really what I think is fascinating about everything that's going on. Obviously, before we get to the actual meat of the story, there's all this back history that
Oh
really
yeah,
sets the table, and this rivalry and this his father and who his father was, and the fact that his father is country famous, not country music famous, but like notorious bootlegger
yeah,
country
yeah.
famous. I just want to make that crystal clear. Um, I'm sure his father did enjoy country music, but that's not the point here. Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah. So a lot of it was geography. I needed the mountains of the Appalachian Mountains. I needed the University of Georgia because this girl at the beginning, she's a college student at the University of Georgia, which is in Athens, Georgia, and the Atlanta, they're in close proximity to Atlanta. That old, I mean, you can't get any more southern than Atlanta, Gone with the Wind, and that old money aspect to it that was important. And the Appalachian Mountains are just it's very fascinating to me. You got the mountain people up there, and then you have aspects of the Appalachian Mountains that people disappear all the time there. There's a whole lot of people living that you don't see for many, many years, and it's got a lot of ghostly and you know um, scary stuff in there that's happened throughout the years. I mean, there's many you hear all the time about people that have disappeared in there, and that plays a important part in the story as we go along.
hmm Yeah, and even to talk about that too, because I mean, obviously, this is very much New York crime, And
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
obviously, one of the things about mountains that I don't think people are aware of is that mountains are historic for the people leaving, disappearing, murders, people not coming back. If you want to be freaked out, just type in mountain murders, and something will pop
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Google. And you won't sleep because there's some messed up ones out there.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. That's the crazy
but
thing that's happened.
and then also, and I hate to disparage the South this way, but also Southern justice is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus
You didn't want to be a tax man going up into the mountains to try to get people to start paying their taxes. You might not. There's stories of them hanging from trees with signs on them saying "Don't come back," and that's real. That stuff did happen. So yeah, that would be a very scary job, especially back prior to the '70s.
it still might be a scary job in
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. I'm
2025.
sure. I'm sure. I mean, you go through there driving your car, and you'll say deep in there, you'll see a little smoke from a chimney, and it's crazy that people still live like that. But that's their that's who they are. That's their culture, and there's nothing wrong with it.
And so obviously, even to set that scene up, because I think people don't even realize that, if you do a little research, you're gonna realize that, oh, it's a different culture. And obviously, to make this even more complicated, I mean, it's crystal clear that Donald's father was running, alcohol and moonshining, and that he killed people, and that there are bodies buried in this area. And obviously, an event happened as well. And so, what is this like? Because you really have an 8-year-old boy witnessing two, I guess, moonshine rival gangs. There are casualties, and I don't think that's a secret. We don't know what casualties there were at this point. And even if we do find them out as the book goes further, I don't want to ruin that too much. But what is this like? Because that clearly influenced Donald and him as a detective,
Yeah,
and even how he views things. And obviously, he has a warped sense of, I don't want to call it reality, but of justice and criminology and things of that nature. Because, well, if you witnessed people dying and you're 8 years old and you know that your father and your uncle buried people in a spot, even if it's not a scene of a crime, that's going to affect you. So, what is that like? Because that obviously affects the way he works, the way he thinks, the way he functions, combined with all of his back history, and even how this idea of, technically, I guess it's new money versus old money as well.
yeah, yeah. So it's he, as he grew up around his father, he definitely knows the difference between man's laws and God's laws, and that's kind of how he lives his life. Detective Alan McIntyre finds nothing wrong with moonshining because that's man laws. That's his generation. That's his culture, and so something that aspect to it. He definitely doesn't is anti-government in that sense. Obviously, with the murders, that's going to be a totally different animal. But throughout the story, his father can do no wrong, and he's idolized his father. In issue one, his father brings him into a bar because that's their culture. That's what they do. They see nothing wrong with it, and his dad takes him on a moonshine run in his Hemi Barracuda, which is the car is kind of a character in itself. I wanted the Hemi Barracuda. It's a really cool car. My dad built them when I was a kid, 1973. He would build his muscle cars in the garage, and I was really fascinated with the Hemi Barracuda. And so, just like Kit from Knight Rider or generally from Dukes of Hazzard, we have the um, Plymouth Barracuda in Dexter Detective, and the car is actually handed down to the son, and that's the car that Detective McIntyre today drives around, kind of a la the Supernatural brothers driving in their souped up car. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. But yeah, the detective definitely has a lot of issues, but he's a man. And if you read the beginning of the comic, I start off with a prologue, and it's a father writing to a son in 1999, when you obviously don't know yet in the story, but you kind of piece it together that it's kind of when the detective first becomes a cop, and it's kind of what's good about, I think, my prologue, and which I think all prologues should do, is kind of give you a sense of foreboding and some foreshadowing. So the detective kind of knows, according to his father, that there's forces in this world that they, whether they like it or not, are kind of put on this earth to fight. And as the story goes along, we find out why. There's a lot to unravel in the story, and things
It
aren't as
gets
they
interesting.
appear.
This is what gets interesting, and obviously, there's the concept of dirty cops, and
Yeah,
I don't think that that's a secret. And obviously, you get political stuff going on with just, and this is just society. It's not even your book. I mean, there are dirty cops, there are political cops,
yeah,
and it's nothing against police or any of that. It's just what it is,
yeah,
and this really provides a very interesting story because here you have somebody who comes from quote unquote a dirty family, meaning a bunch of criminals. He becomes a police officer. Obviously, his father knows that he's becoming a cop. And then I would imagine that there's internal strife within Donald, with his father. There's also a philosophy that's taking place. There's also the idea of betrayal or infiltration. It could be on the table too, in that sense. I mean, there's the whole movie The Departed, where you have, a dirty cop infiltrating, a clean thing. So they all get the heads up, the mob. And so, what is this like? Because it really is a very interesting philosophical question that I would imagine that you explore and that you dive into and you address. And even it really affects not necessarily, you know, what has happened between these two moonshine gangs, but it reflects a relationship and even how the world is viewed. And so, what is that like? 'Cause it's super fascinating. I don't know how far you're going to go into that per se, but that's
yeah,
some of
yeah.
them
I mean,
too.
yeah, definitely touch on it somewhat. Um, but you can't get too bogged down with exposition, and so yeah, I mean, it's definitely a place apart in it. But mostly, I try to keep things moving along as fast as I can, and there's a lot of characters. This will be, like I said, an 8 issue series, and yeah, there's a lot of mystery to it, and this philosophy of the detective, and but then with the evil entity, I try to keep the pacing going, and that's an important aspect to
So
it.
we didn't even get to that yet. So I
Yeah,
mean, this is what's so interesting. And the reason I wanted to talk
yeah,
about this is because now you have a very interesting thing where you could have an entire book just based on the father son
oh
and
yeah,
this
definitely,
police
definitely.
stuff just by itself, and I think it'd be fascinating.
Yeah, the theme of the story really is about a son who doesn't lose faith in his father, and even though they've grown up and been told what a terrible father they are and been demonized, the family's been demonized. In the comic, there's like a documentary crew that does a hit piece on the Mackinder brothers and whatnot, and the detective stays away from it, and he doesn't give in to what people would say, admit that your family are terrible people. He refuses to go along with anything really, and he's going to keep on fighting to prove that his dad actually isn't this horrible murderer that he's been portrayed. So that's kind of the theme of the story, is not losing faith in your family and what you believe to be right, even though you've been pulled by other family members and even other people to try to get you to go along with something that in your heart is not actually a fact.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring all this up is that I mean that in of itself is fascinating, but then you get him being a cop, and you get the sense that this might be his last case that he's now on, and apparently there's a serial killer or multiple people we don't know, I'm going with the idea that it's one,
Yes.
and I don't think it's more than one, but it can be, but I don't think it is now on his third victim, and it just so happens that this third victim is right where those two bodies were buried, that his father, and you get the sense, and I could be taking a leap of faith here, that the killing was planned there. It wasn't that was just a random spot let's go
No.
kill this person. Nobody's around.
Yeah. They're trying to get the detective's attention. They want to steer him on a certain course, as we find out in the story, and whether he takes the bait or not, we find out as the story culminates.
Because that's really the main meat, or as I like to call it, sort of the driving force, and everything else, I guess, is context to why this story is taking place now at this time. And that's what's fascinating. That's why I wanted to really talk about that background, because a cop going after a serial killer, and I don't mean any disrespect, has been done over and over and
Yeah.
over again. It's the
Yes.
idea of, okay, he comes from this side of the tracks. He comes from this type of a family. There's some serious politics and some shady stuff going around the corner, and that's what's fascinating.
Yeah. It is. Like I said, it's got a lot of elements. There's even a Jeffrey Epstein, that whole sex cult thing that went on. There's a part of that in the story as well too. So there's a lot to unravel, but I think I do a good job with unraveling it as we go. Really, in my opinion, when writing a mystery, you want to reveal something just about a few seconds before the audience or the readers get to it. You know, you don't want it to come out of left field. There's a certain say, I can't recall, where it's convenient for the writer, so they put this in here. But I think a good mystery is one where the readers are slowly kind of putting it together, but right before they do, you reveal it. So I believe I do that quite well in the story, and I've written 7 issues of the 8-issue series. I only have one more left to go. So it's all been well planned out, well thought out, and I can just about guarantee that anybody that reads issue 1 will be hooked. They'll really enjoy it. You have this fascinating moonshine history of this family that hasn't really been done, and then you have this demonic entity kind of connected to it all. That's a lot of fun as well. So no,
And
it doesn't bog down at all, and I can't stand exposition. There's not a lot of talking heads, even though it is, it's not a superhero story, it's not a TNA story, but it's something that I believe that people, once they just read issue 1, will be hooked.
And obviously, and even going further into this, because things are unfolding, and obviously there is a connection, and it's not. And I mean, I'm going to spoil something slightly, but I don't think it's a big spoil. That this is intentional. It's not just a random murder that somebody said, I'm killing people and I'm going to dump the body here. This is very intentional. And I don't think people get the sense that it's not intentional. I don't think
No, because the moonshine
bottle.
bottle down her throat kind of gives it away too. If it's not clear about her body being hung there, she has a bottle of the Mackinder's moonshine back from 40 years ago shoved down her throat to even give it more of a, hey, detective, hi, I'm right here. I'm getting your attention. Come out and
I'm just saying
come after me.
if you come into this Kickstarter thinking that issue 8's going to end with it being a coincidence, I hate to ruin your day. I'm just saying. Saying, I hate to ruin your day right now if that's what you're thinking, because I guarantee you that's not how it's going to end. We all know how it's going to end. It's going to be a dream, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
But even going further, because I don't want to push it too far, and obviously there's going to be some twists, turns, and there's some connection. I'm going to throw out a red herring that it could be somebody in this guy's family. It could be him. It could be a vendetta because, this detective could also not be clean either. There could be a million things that are going on, and it could be very interesting on how it all ends. But I'm going to table all of my theories here. And you mentioned something interesting where you have 7 out of the 8 issues written. And so what is this like? Because this is one of the things that I think people don't understand about comics is that to produce a comic is not all that expensive compared to producing animation, compared to producing television, compared to producing a movie. but it is still expensive.
Oh yeah.
And so it's easy to write it, but I think people get very nervous right now, including myself, when I'm like, hey, am I going to receive the rest of this story? And
Hmm.
so, what is this like to be like, hey, look, I got a bunch of stuff written, and now it's just a matter of getting it funded and getting it printed. And it might take, we might only be able to do 2 or 3 issues a year, but it is written and it needs some revisions here and there, depending on
Yeah.
the art. But what is that? Because I think that does help to reassure people.
Yeah. Yeah. I will like it's writing. It's a blast. I actually wrote issue 7 in one day because it's all been planned out. I'm sure, as you kind of get the rough idea in your head and you write little notes here, and then it builds up into a kind of a huge release when you write the issue. And it was so exciting for me that I wrote issue 7 in one sitting, and I love it. And it's people will really love it. It's really my belief with writing anything is you want to pace it well, is build up and set the seeds and lay it out and to where it's still exciting for people, but it doesn't like take them by surprise. You don't hang a left. So it's all been planned out for many, many months now how it was going to end. I mean, one of the first things you do, I think most writers, is you come up with the beginning, and then you come up with the end, and then you kind of fill it all in as you go. And that's kind of how this is, and that's how Alpha Dogs is as well. Alpha Dogs will probably be, I think, 50 issues to tell the entire story, but it's already kind of in a big chunk already planned out. And that is going to launch actually in 3 weeks, Alpha Dogs 3. And Alpha Dogs 1 and 2 were both successfully funded on Kickstarter. And if you missed out on issue 1 and 2, they'll be offered with issue 3 too. So just to throw that out there.
So to even go further into all of this, because this gets one of my biggest pet peeves about Kickstarter right now is there are issues with fulfillment. And
Yeah.
right now, as an individual, and this is just me personally, I've been burned on about 7 Kickstarters.
Wow. I've
I
only been burned on 2. I've supported, I think I'm at 22, which 5 of them are still going on. But yeah, I've only been burned twice, thankfully. So I always fulfill. My other 2 comics, I fulfilled. The first one took a little bit longer because of COVID, but issue 2 of Alpha Dogs I fulfilled, and it was a month after the campaign. I started sending out comics, so maybe a month and a half. But yeah, everybody got their comics quite quickly because
because
I, being a person who buys comics on Kickstarter, it is very frustrating, and so I try to do my best. And with Dime Store Detective, 3/4 of the comic are already drawn. He actually sent me page 16 the other day. It's a 24 issue comic. So he, like I said, he's about 3/4 of the way done illustrating. And that's obviously what takes so long. And the colorist has already colored just about all of his pages, because as I said, we go back and forth from color to black and white depending on present or 1981. So yeah, I definitely will fulfill. But with any luck, a month after the campaign ends, I should be pretty close to sending it to the printer. So it shouldn't
because
be too long.
this is one of the things that I think people really get upset about, and it's I've actually pulled back of backing books because I've
Yeah,
been so upset lately. And it wasn't like a $10 pledge. I mean, I backed like a $70 pledge.
yeah,
And there are certain things that I don't know. There's right now 4 books that I don't know if I'm going to get it. The 5th one, I know I'm going to get it eventually because there's other things going on. But those 4 books, I don't know if I'm going to get it. And
jeez.
a few of those people are still doing other projects.
I
And
know
this is
one person is too, and it's very annoying. I don't want to cause any creators any problems, so I keep my mouth shut. But yeah, it is very rude.
it's upsetting to me, and it's also frustrating because I'm like,
Yeah.
look, I'm an advocate for the book and I want the book. I wouldn't have backed it because I make money buying and selling comics, but I don't really make money off of Kickstarter
No.
that I buy. I make money in other ways. So when I back something on Kickstarter, I'm an advocate for the book. I want to see the book, or I want to support you because you're a friend of mine and then you screw me. It's like
Yeah.
it's a very frustrating thing, and I think that there's a whole thing where certain people are trying to do this as a career, and they are acting like it's a career, but they're really a hobbyist in this area.
Yeah.
And while they're making money, they're not making a hell of a lot of money, and they also don't understand that customer service is everything. And the
Oh
only
yeah.
reason why I know this is I sell on eBay, and customer service to me is the number one thing. And
Hmm.
so it's just mind boggling, but I think it is reassuring when people hear that a lot of the writing is done and you're waiting on the art and that you're going to fulfill within 6 to 8 weeks
Yeah.
after you get the money.
Absolutely.
That's the other thing, too, that I think people, want to hear, too, because I'll be very honest. I would
Oh
rather
yeah.
back an average book that I know I'm going to get than back a great book that I might get.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why. But yeah, I mean, I want everybody to buy all 8 issues. So I definitely the last thing I want to do is upset any potential customers. And I've already done 2 Kickstarters and fulfilled in a timely manner, so that won't be a problem. So yeah, go ahead and beg my book. I'll definitely have it to you in a couple months at the latest after the Kickstarter ends.
Yeah, because it's just an agitation to me, and
Yeah.
it is frustrating. And even it's frustrating when somebody says they're going to back in 3 months and then they wait 6. And I
Hmm.
get it, life happens, but I digress. Enough of me
Yeah. Yeah.
complaining about
Yeah, well, like I
that.
said,
But
I've already showed a bunch of pages on my social media to show that hey, this comic's already the wheels are turning as we speak. So it won't be an issue with getting the comic in people's hands. Like I said, if they have to wait more than 2 months to get their issue of Dexter Detective, I'll be surprised because I want to get it out there and because I want them to come back for issue 2, and I am. I'm not going back to any of the people that have burned me, obviously.
yeah, let's even talk about that too. So one of the things, and this is just an eBay business, and it's a little bit different than Kickstarter, but I think it follows some similar principles where
Hmm.
I have repeat customers. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in Kickstarter don't understand that if you piss off your customer, you upset them, you burn them, and then you come back. And if it takes you 3 years to get me your book, I mean, there's an idea of trust.
Yeah.
On eBay, there's trust. And on Kickstarter, there's trust. There's trust at your local comic shop. And I think it's a big lacking business problem right now on Kickstarter is that if you say you're going to get me your book in 10 weeks, you got to get me your damn book in 10 weeks
Yeah.
because that's your word.
Hmm.
And there are people that I don't back on Kickstarter anymore because they broke their word. Their
Yeah.
book came okay. Their book's a good book. It's not a great book. It's not a bad book. It's an average, maybe a little bit above average, but you broke your word on certain things. And I think, and all of a sudden you might have lost $300 over the next 5 years. But if you broke your word with me, there's probably at least 10 other people who are like exactly like me, and that's 3 grand, and it's just bad business. And so I think that's something that's very much a problem right now in Kickstarter is that people don't think like this. And maybe I'm too business oriented and that I have run a Kickstarter, but I don't think like everybody else thinks on Kickstarter.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I definitely am in the same boat with it that you are, and that's why I make sure I fulfill in a timely manner because your reputation is all you have, and there's so many different comic book people right now. I mean, Kickstarter just inundated right now with people like myself. So not only do you have to be really good and be relentless in getting the word out, but you have to not piss off your customers. So I definitely that's why I didn't start this or Alpha Dogs 3 until I don't start a Kickstarter until I'm at least halfway done with the project because I don't want anybody to be waiting and waiting, waiting, and I want to get going with the next issue. So
Yeah, I think that's it's a big problem where there's a lot of comics, and I have this discussion when I ran my Kickstarter. I asked for money for my podcast. And they're like, "Oh, there's a lot of podcasts out there," and I said, "Yeah, that's true, but there's a lot of people also who are doing comics, and believe me, there's a lot more people doing comics than podcasters
oh
out
yeah,
there." and I need a differentiating factor. And I don't think
Yeah.
some people got it and some people didn't. And there's a lot more of you guys than there is of me. And guess what? I can choose anybody, and that's just in indie comics, let alone wrestling, let alone mainstream comics, let alone cosplay. I mean, I can, let alone any other sector, technically, this show
Yeah.
can run in. And so, money is a distinguishing factor, as well as people I want to interview or reach out to. And some people get it and some people don't. And I think that's a real thing that people in comics need to understand, is saying, you have to earn my dollar. Because
Yeah.
guess what? If you have a $10 book and then 14 other people have a $10 book, who's got better art? Who's going to ship on time? Who has a good reputation? All this matters. Who's actually a decent human being? That's a big one right now, because
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this, but there's a lot of people in the comic industry who fight each other,
I
yell
know,
at
it's
each other, and
insane.
it's like
We're such small fish.
it's so unattractive.
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out with people who are yelling and screaming all day. I'm an adult. I'm a 29-year-old man. I don't want to deal with a bunch of, babies fighting over. They should be focusing on their business, and if they're really that angry, they should put the other guy out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I don't understand it. The egos can be ridiculous when it's, like I said, we're such small fish that they should support each other, even if you have different opinion, whether it be politics or whatnot. Just
It's not even about
let it
politics.
go.
It's about
Yeah.
like ownership of books and fulfillment. And it's about even just like certain people have different philosophies how they run their Kickstarter, but
Mhm.
both people are making money, and it has nothing. I don't even know why people are fighting. And I'm saying to myself, like, the saying is that you don't wrestle with a pig, because the pig will like it.
Yeah. Yep. No, that is
And
very, very true.
I don't get it, in which I just walk away. But I think that it's a real business problem right now in the entire, community, where I don't want to support people who are fighting. I don't want to support people who are bad human beings, and I want to support people who have decent books.
Yeah.
Your book could be average, and I'll support you if you're going to get me your book on time. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
I will support somebody if they get me their book on time, because
Yeah.
having a book
Absolutely.
6 weeks after the campaign ends, or even 2 months after it ends, I am more likely to support you versus the idea that your average fulfillment is 5 months later.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just an
Yeah.
issue that, like, because I want content. And in an age of content, that's my problem. But I
Yeah.
digress. I think that's a real advantage when people can get me content fast.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
But enough about that. Now that I got you and my careers canceled, um, I'm sure that a bunch of people are going to be not happy with that statement. But I do want to talk about rewards, because rewards are very important.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously, a PDF of issue 1. I'm sorry that issue 2 is not available on this campaign yet. That's a joke. That's a joke. There's only one issue out so far,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. We start out at the very, very beginning. So,
So
and it,
there's the PDF of issue 1, and then
yeah.
there's the physical copy as well, right here. So that's, I think, the regular one.
Yeah, that's the
And then,
regular one. It's kind of the bean. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
that's the regular one.
Moving
I'll let
over,
you
there's
explain.
a Polaroid of the father and son back in 1981. So it's a cool. I believe it's a really cool cover. That kind of gives you a little bit of taste. And here's the variant. So I wanted the variant to look like the old pulp uh, novels, the dime store novels from the 30s and 40s. I wanted it to kind of have that look. The pulp fiction books back then. So that's what I was going with.
And let's even talk a little bit about this, because obviously, people can get issue 1, they get the variant, and you didn't go over the top with your awards. I think your
No,
awards,
I didn't. I wanted to keep it as reasonable as I could and not lose too much money with it.
because this is something, and I'm sure you see it, where some people have. I mean, I'll name my friend Jim Noble. He has like 100 covers, and there's advantages to having a
Oh
hundred
yeah,
covers,
definitely.
but there's also disadvantages where, you're now, if you're a comic shop and you have 100 covers, that's different because you're selling in retail. But if you're a Kickstarter and you have 100 covers, that's a lot of art that you paid for. That's a lot of
Mhm.
different selling you have to do. That's a lot of headaches. But I've noticed that people have 25 covers. Some people have 13, 14 covers,
Yeah.
and it does increase the price. And I don't know pound for pound if you're actually making more money by having 15 covers or 14 covers versus having three or even having two if you
Yeah.
have the right book per
Yeah.
pound for pound,
Yeah.
not in volume, but if I sold $5,000 and somebody did 25,000, but I only had two covers and they had 15 pound for pound, I might be beating them
Oh
in
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to figure a cover is gonna. I mean, if you get a really cheap artist, maybe $200, but there's plenty of cover artists that charge $400. So that eats into you if you have 13, 14. But I don't know if you can do it and you're making money, more power to you.
I'm not here to say don't do it. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
I don't think some of these people are running real cost analysis. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
from the
I don't know.
financial
I
world.
have enough trouble with two covers, so
But even going into that idea of having a second cover, because I know sometimes people say, look, I'm just producing my book and, you know, money's tight and it's, cover A, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm just doing the one cover and we're going to see what happens. Also, if
mhm.
you only have one cover, it simplifies a lot of things. Or they might have cover A and then the virgin of cover A. But
Yeah.
I consider that to be one cover because you didn't
Mhm.
pay for new art. You just paid for a virgin cover of
Yeah, it's a nice it's a nice way to make extra money without paying for more art, that's for sure. I don't know how many
yeah.
people actually buy those though. I really I have a feeling there's not a lot of people that buy the virgin covers, but I could be wrong. I never have, and I don't see the
You are
sense of
so wrong. There are people who only buy virgin covers.
really? Okay. But then you don't
Virgin
know what the
covers.
title is. It just seems like that'd be tough for advertising, but
So
I
so
don't
so,
know.
so,
It's
so you look at like something like J. Scott Campbell's virgin covers. You look at somebody like Stan Yak. He has a bunch of virgin covers that are more indie.
oh really?
Plenty of people buy virgin covers. I
Hmm.
bought like hollow foil virgin covers for like 50, $60 from
Oh
like Big
wow.
Dog Ink. So like people like that stuff and it's super interesting. But because what it is that people want to look at the whole art of it. It's an
Okay.
art thing because it's almost like a print, a virgin cover.
Mhm.
It's just that you have a comic book instead
I
in
see.
it.
No,
Like
that's a good. Yeah, I'll have to look into that because I just assumed that it'd be bad business for the creator because now the title is not on there anymore or the credits. But no, it's probably a good idea. What do I know?
it's weird. Sometimes virgin covers hit, sometimes they miss, but it's super interesting in that regard. But even going further into this, because obviously giving people one or two choices is always a good thing. In my opinion, I think that creators. I mean, if I go create a book, because I haven't created one yet, my goal is to have three or four different covers, but not to go beyond that.
Yeah.
Because I believe that choice is good, but too much choice can be bad. One of the
Yeah,
hardest things.
with Alpha Dogs and this, I did two, but with Alpha Dogs 3, I'm doing three covers. So, I mean, actually, if you want to count the sketch cover, I guess it's four. I don't really count the blank covers, but
But a blank cover is still an option because some
yep,
people.
absolutely. So yeah, it technically is. It's just there's no artwork. It's for the sketch covers.
Yeah, people love. So there's a group of people that love blank covers, and
Oh yeah,
I'm one of them
definitely.
because I like getting commissions on them,
Yeah.
and it's fun when you have a commission on a book, and so and you go get your favorite artist and they draw whatever they want on it. It's wonderful, and
Hmm.
so that's something that is always cool in that regard, but even going further into that, I mean, as I was saying, I think choice is always good, but I think that once you get to 15 or even 20 covers, there's too much choice. But what do I know? But even going further into this, you also have a combo pack where I think people can save a little bit of money, or it's combined with some other stuff and it's some bonus stuff where obviously they get the regular. I think they get the variant. They get obviously autographed copies where you'll sign it, the name in the comic. I believe, a sticker that's
Yeah.
only the in this package or anything above this package. And so what is this like? Because this is one of the things that I think people also miss on Kickstarter is Kickstarter is not retail. This
No.
is this is one of the things. I made a video on my other show talking about comic book investing, and a retail scenario and a Kickstarter are two different markets completely.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah.
so on Kickstarter, I find it an experience. And this
Yeah.
is why my Kickstarter was rough, because I don't come from Kickstarter experience land. I come from more retail investing land. But
Mhm.
what is this like to be finding ways how to add value that may or may not work in a retail setting?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, after you're asking people to pay a premium, because being a small, I mean, you're only printing up hundreds, where publishing house is printing up thousands. So you have to have kind of a premium, and in order to get people to pay that, you have to offer things such as, your name on this, your name in a thank you page on the last page. Is if you support it, then for this tier, then you get your name. And a lot of people, including myself, think it's kind of cool to have your name in the comic book. And then also you get this sticker that my wife is making on her Cricut. She did the same thing with Alpha Dogs. It's an exclusive sticker that you only get at Kickstarter. So, you run a Kickstarter, you want to do exclusive things that you can only get through Kickstarter. So, and obviously signed copies too. So, yeah, I mean, people are paying a premium, but they're getting some pretty cool stuff that you can't get in a store. So and they seem to enjoy it, and that's one reason we're able to do what we do is people support us and want to support indie creators, because there's plenty of indie creators that are every bit of good, if not better, than the people out in Hollywood that are writing.
Yeah, no, there's so many people who are so talented, and it's
Yeah.
really really a shame where, unfortunately, a lot of people who are talented do not get support. I know this because I've lived through it, and I have a lot of friends who are podcasters. And you look at people on Sirius XM and people who have shows, and I would make an argument that there are plenty of people who they just don't have the views, but their material is great, and
Hmm.
it's a very complicated thing. And I mean, I have this conversation with cosplayers, and I'm like, I think your cosplay is better than that person who has a million followers.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The difference is that that person has a million followers, but also things have changed. I mean, I've had this conversation, and if people want to go through, I mean, I made a lot of enemies because of it, but I don't think I'm wrong. Maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased because I have to side with myself, but that's not the point. But it's really, I think that's something that also, like, it's hard for me on Kickstarter understand how to make value out of a podcast. But it is what it is. It's a complicated entity. But
Yeah.
I do believe that, as I stated at the start of this, is that if you like something, you have to support it. It doesn't matter if it's big, small, or anything in between. You have to support it. But because without, I'll ask you a question. So, without funding, could you make this book? Could you make Alpha Dogs without Kickstarter money? Or would it be that you could make it, but instead of having one issue or two issues coming out a year, you would have one issue coming out every 18 months?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be very, very. I probably wouldn't be able to do it because I've lost money already with Alpha Dogs, but just because you start out and that's how it is, when you've got no reputation, I think. So yeah, it would be. It took me a year to get Alpha Dogs 1 done because it took me a year to build up the money. I was just kind of paying as I went with the pages, and then I was able to take that money that I made off issue 1 and put it into issue 2, and with issue two's money, I've actually kind of put it into Dexter Detective um, and with Alpha Dogs 3 too. So it's a process, but hopefully, after issue 3 comes out and Dexter Detective gets funded, then I'll be able to take it maybe to a publisher to where I can still do the Kickstarters, but then I can kind of have a distribution with the comics. That's my ultimate goal in this is to be able to get this, because you don't know how long you can do it, how long the funding is going to be there for people, because
It's
something
complicated.
happens.
So for me with my show, I've been doing this for almost 10 years. And what people don't understand is that I'm gonna do it regardless. It's just a matter that if you want more content, the more money I have, the more content I can produce. So if people
Absolutely.
want 6 to 10 episodes a week, well,
Yeah.
I need funding for that because
Hmm.
it's not just, it's just the way it is. Or if
Yeah.
you want micro content, you want a variety of stuff, I need funding for that. Otherwise, it's going to get slowed down, which is what it's starting to look like. Season 4 is going to be a lighter season. Now, a
Yeah.
lighter season for me is probably 120 episodes. It's still a decent amount of content, but it's like
Yeah.
all of a sudden that means there's less spots. And
Yeah.
so, that's what I think people don't understand is that when somebody has more funding, if they really are in this and they want to build comics, they're going to use that funding to finish off a series. I mean, if you got $10,000, your entire series for this book is done, right?
Mhm.
I'm presuming you're not going to go out and take a distribution. You might take a little of a distribution, but you're going to put a lot of that back into this
Oh,
series.
definitely. Yeah.
So if somebody wrote me a $10,000 check for my podcast and said, I like what you do, that 10K is going right back into the business. And now I'm covered for another 3 seasons and I'm going to have a lot of content because guess what? It subsidizes a variety of different things. And it also allows me maybe to give up a week or two here at my day job so that I can actually get those extra interviews in. I could actually produce more content. Maybe it allows me to go and talk to my employer, and now I can write myself a $4,000 check, which is for the month that I would make. And now I could spend another month, or I could take an extra 10 vacation days or an extra 20 vacation days and actually get more work done and build out
Mhm.
what you guys want. And that's what I think people don't understand is that without funding, it doesn't work or it goes slow.
Exactly.
If you want 400 interviews from me, everybody, the answer is give me money. Because if people gave me enough money, we would be having 400 interviews a year. And we would have 400 good interviews a year on top of that. But I digress. That's my pitch for everybody giving me money.
We all
Because
got
I'm
we
not
all we
making
got to
money off
hustle.
this. I just want it to continue. But I digress because you got a few other rewards as well. You got a retail package of 5 books and then 10 books out there, which I think is important too. Retail is a
Yeah.
niche. I'm entering that space as well, so I'm learning that the hard way.
Yeah.
It is very very hard.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Very much so.
And then also you have an interior art page, which I don't know if anybody claimed that yet, but I'm
Uh-uh.
not even sure how that works. And which is a first come
Yes.
first
So you
serve.
get a page of the comic, the actual page that the author, I'm sorry, writer, the illustrator has drawn from the comic. You actually get one of those pages. No one's bought it yet, but it is issue 1, so probably a lot of people don't know, if it's gonna have legs or whatnot.
So
So it might be
is it
something to do in
with
issue 2.
is it first come first serve with
Yeah,
whatever somebody
yeah.
wants?
Basically, first
Page
come, first
three?
serve. You name which page you want, and hopefully it's still there. But as of right now, you can have all the pages.
So right now, I mean, this is my question. So how does that work? Because nobody has really seen like page 14 of the book. So
Hmm.
is it the idea that you're gonna send somebody a digital copy of the book and they'll be like, "What page do you want?"
Yeah,
So yeah, this
exactly.
makes sense. So that triggers
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot. Like,
Yeah, like I said, it's basically first come, first serve, which obviously isn't a problem right now because nobody's bought that tier. So
but you
yeah, it
get what
would
I'm
be,
saying, right?
yeah, yep. So it's like I said, they would see the comic, the digital, and say, "Hey, I want this page," and um, hopefully it's still there. It's 6. There's 16 pages that I'm selling, so um, of the 24. So hopefully, hopefully somebody backs it, but it might be something that will come later on as the issue gets bigger and there's more people, and um, you know, I might be something I'll offer again when issue 2 comes out.
Yeah, original art is complicated with indie. It's just it's always complicated.
Yeah.
It's also the idea that I don't even know who the illustrator is on this book off the top of my head. So
Yeah, his name is Lucas Cicchetti. He's done a lot of work. He's terrific. He's out of Italy. He's well known in Italy, not so much as much in America, but he definitely has a reputation as a very good artist. I mean, if you look at the obviously the page, you can see the first 7 pages on Kickstarter, so you can see for yourself if it's something you'd be interested in. And I can't imagine somebody would read it and say, "Oh, this isn't for me," because there's not a lot of exposition. We get right into the heart of the story. A detective. Um, well, we start out with a prologue, and then we get to seeing this city in 1940, the same spot in 1981, and at the present time, until we get to where see this person burying a body, and in the present time, these cops looking up at the woman that's hanging nude from a tree, and we get right into it with the detective. Arriving on the scene. I don't like a lot of exposition, and there's way too many Kickstarter comics. I've noticed that we start out and it's nothing but dialogue bubbles, and we're explaining what happened in the issue before. Well,
it's
if you do it
complicated.
right, you either can pick up on the story as you read it, or hopefully you like it enough that you go back and get the previous issue. I kind of took that from Brian K. Vaughan, that page from his book, and I loved how he did his comics, where he doesn't tell you what happened in the previous issue. He gets right into it, and so it can stand alone on its own. And I think Dexter Detective and Alpha Dogs are the same way.
It's interesting. You mentioned something really interesting, even going beyond Brian K. Vaughan, and I have a Saga one signed by him, graded.
Oh,
Um,
oh gosh, that's gonna be worth a lot of money.
with Fiona Staples signed it too. So
It's what?
Fiona Staples signed the book too.
Wow, how much is that worth? That's gotta be worth
It's probably
tons.
worth like 500-600.
Oh, that's it? Gosh, I figured it'd be worth even more than that.
I
Do you
mean,
have it
it's
graded? I think you said
9.6.
you had it graded, right?
Yeah, it's a 9.6.
Wow,
So
so it was 500. God, I thought it'd be close to 2 grand. Huh.
the
Yeah.
9.8 retailer is about a 2 grand book.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't
It's
I don't have anything in slab, so I'm not really. I,
not my most expensive book though, but my most
yeah,
expensive book is a rare book. It doesn't come up on the market ever. It's a really really pricey book. But I'm not gonna go tell anybody what that book is.
okay.
Publicly because people are gonna hate me when they
Well,
when
then you gotta tell
I'm
me
like
off the air
pay
because
for it.
now I'm intrigued.
I'll tell you off air.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
a weird book. It's a weird book, and it's not what people think it is, and it's not nude. It's not even comic esque. It's
Okay. Oh, I probably
something
wouldn't heard of it anyway.
very
So,
interesting. It's an
huh.
interesting book, but I digress. Um, and then I guess the final big reward, and I think every campaign needs to have one, is that you have a meet and greet. I guess sort of a Q&A with you, um,
Yeah,
type thing. Zoom call, pick your brain. I think you pretty much get all the books. You get a T-shirt of whatever
yeah,
you want. I think there might be some other stuff in there as well. Um,
yeah, yeah. It's
you know,
Yeah, everybody needs to. I think it's important for every Kickstarter to have a big, even if it's never nobody touches it. It's still, I think, important to have some big reward that somebody who just enjoys your work, and that's actually what happened with me. It's somebody has put a backed it because they just like my work and want to help get my comic funded. So it was really nice of them. So
see, that's interesting about Kickstarter too. Somebody backed a $120 tier on mine, and they're like, "Yo, I just want you to be funded because
hmm
I see what you do, I appreciate what you do, and I want to support you, and I have the money to do it." Some people throw an extra $30 in, and I think that's the other thing too is that this goes back to the idea that there's certain people I'm like, look, I think your book's okay, but you work your ass off. And so
yeah,
if I could throw you an extra $10 or an extra
hmm
20 bucks, well, I'm backing your book, not because I think your book is the next best thing since sliced bread, but because you need this extra $20 to get to the next level. And
hmm
I think that's the other thing where people are like, oh, I only back Kickstarters that I like and I only support it. I think that's the wrong attitude. I think you should back what you like, meaning that if you do not believe in, porn, for instance, you should not be backing a graphic book.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm trying to use the most obvious example.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So but that's not what I'm saying. But if you say, "Oh man, this is a detective story," and detective stories are okay, but this guy is working his ass off, and I have an extra $10, and he needs the money, or I backed everything I wanted to back this month, and I got an extra $20. Let me throw, John here $10 because detective stories are okay. They're not my cup of tea, for lack of a better word, but they're okay, and this guy needs the money. And I think that's the wrong approach, is to say, well, I'm not backing because it's not my cup of tea. Sometimes, I think people have to realize that your best writing might not have happened, and somebody needs their first break or their second
Yeah.
or their third. And I think it's a problem, especially with established creators right now. I think it is a big problem, and I think that people are waking up to it. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This show gets people canceled. I'm just letting you know.
Why is that?
Because we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
shy
No.
away from anything anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, I call things out the way I see it,
Yeah.
because I've been doing this for so long that
Hmm.
there's a lot of top creators who were where you were at one point, and people back them, and now they don't back the next generation.
Yeah. Oh, no,
And,
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
the
a
next
shame.
generation isn't an age thing. It's just, if you're a brand new creator, and you like the concept, or even if you don't like the concept and you got the money, it's like at a certain point you got to give somebody a break.
Yep.
And
Yep. I
I'm
absolutely
not
agree.
saying go and back something you're going to absolutely hate, but if you think you might like it, or you're going to take a chance on it, and I think it's a problem. And I think that there's been a massive issue in comics where it's this ego issue that's going on. But I think your big tier is really based on the idea that somebody likes you,
Yes,
wants to
obviously.
see
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
wants
Because
to
you're
see
gonna
it.
see any interview with me in it. I've done so much promotion. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, those are rewards. And like I said, the comic is very not overly priced, especially considering what people are charging now for comics on Kickstarter. There's some that
So
it's
I'm going to ask you a question that's a touchy question. What do you think that a cover A should sell for on average? Range. Give me a range.
uh
This is a really
for
actually hot issue right now.
oh really? I didn't know that. I'm not really into I probably a lot of comic creators. You work at your day job, then you come home, and you work on your comics. So it's
That's what this is.
I literally I watch about 15 minutes of TV a day, and the rest of it is spent annoying the piss out of everybody on social media by trying to get word out about my comic book. I'm sure I've been blocked by very many people, but yeah, I don't know. I would say for a cover A. I think $10 is a fair. Now, if I'm talking about a 24-page comic. Now, if it's
24,
30,
32 pages, 10, $12 should be. I
what?
feel
I'm sorry.
comfortable.
What was that again?
24 to 32 pages should be around 10 to 12, in my opinion.
Yes. Yep. I agree with that. When I first started out, I didn't know my ass from the hole in the ground when it came to printing. Um, Companies, so I overpaid for Alpha Dogs 1 and 2. So I had to make the price. I think I did Alpha Dogs 1 for 10 and Alpha Dogs. I had to do Alpha Dogs 2 for 12 because it literally cost me $5.60 per comic to print it. So I went with a different printing company. So I'm back to $10 for Alpha Dogs. Three will be cover A for three will be $10. And with this one, cover A is $10. So and then the variant covers is $12 for
Because
Down for Detective.
this is my thought, is that when somebody is charging $20 for a cover A, I buy and sell a lot of Zenoscope books. They will sell me a 375 print run for $20.
Wow.
I know in 3 years from now, I can sell that 375 print run for $40.
Yeah.
Your indie comic cover A for 20 or $25 does not match with a massively well proven exclusive that
Yeah.
is worth a lot more money. And that's where I get tripped up, is that if you're going to charge me $10, I understand that I buy in previews at $2.50 for Marvel, DC, Image, and a bunch of other comics. I'm okay with paying a 4X for an indie comic because you're small. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not okay with paying a Zenescope price for an exclusive that is an extremely low print run that is proven for a cover A.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no economic sense. And then it goes further into the idea of your book isn't proven, there's no track record. And if you're charging 20 or 25 bucks for cover A, when we get to a variant, what are you going to charge for that? Because we just got really, really expensive, really, really fast.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, if you support them for the $20 book, well, are you going to keep going? Do I want to invest now for your series? That's going to be $20 every time. Plus, if it's $20 now, what's it going to be in 6 months? So
It's also the idea that I love the term of upselling. I love the idea of upselling. So
yeah,
I love getting somebody in for 10 bucks. And I've done this on eBay where I got somebody in for like 20 bucks and I wound up selling them $100 worth more of comics. They got a great deal. I got a great deal.
yeah,
Everybody was happy, right? Because I'm like, hey,
hmm
I can find shipping. What else do you need? They're like, oh man, I need this. And I'm like, oh, dude, you're in luck. I have those books and I'm
yeah,
happy to sell them. And so they felt comfortable because they were thinking they were going to come in for 10 bucks. And then they bought more. And then people sweeten the deal. I buy a lot of stuff on eBay, and a lot of people do that. And I say, hey, man, I'll pay you whatever you want. If I'm buying these 2 cards, because you take like 10 cents off or 50 cents off, dude's like, yeah, man, I'm going to combine shipping too. And
yeah,
everybody's
yeah,
happy because it's called upselling. When we start out at 20 bucks, how can you upsell me? Because I'm already too far in. Or
yeah,
we start out at $50 to upsell me to 50, it gets pricey. And so
hmm
it blows my mind because I believe that you should get somebody in for 10 and then come back for Alpha Dogs 3, for instance. You got them in at 1, they were there for 2, and then they came back for 3. They might now buy all the covers when
yeah,
they only bought 1 the first round, right?
yeah, exactly. So with Alpha Dogs 3, I go 10, 12, and 14 for my 3 variant covers up as it goes, but still $14 for a variant that's cost me quite a bit. It's still very, very cheap considering I see right now a few, just a little bit that I've seen for 20 for the variant, they're wanting 25 bucks. So I didn't go over 14 for mine, so because I wanted obviously to keep coming back. And I think it turns a lot of people's noses up when you're wanting 25 bucks for a Kickstarter and essentially a no-name person's comic book.
This is my field. And the short of this, just so everybody understands, when I back a Kickstarter for an investment purpose, it is extremely speculative.
Yes.
Comics as an entity in alternative investing is speculative, but a J. Scott Campbell, a Clayton Crane, a Paul Green is not as speculative as a $25 book, even if it is a J. Scott Campbell or a Paul Green on Kickstarter. It's a speculative play. Whenever
Yeah.
you go into Kickstarter for investing, now you can make real money, but you can lose money. I mean, we're talking about junk bond speculation to the T. We're talking about like the altcoins and cryptocurrency that nobody's ever heard about that are pumped and dumped every day. That's the
Mhm.
type of speculation we're talking about with books. And there's nothing wrong with having a variant on your Kickstarter, but from an investment standpoint, which is what I play in a lot, I don't buy Kickstarter books to invest in because
Mhm.
they're so speculative.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For every one good Kickstarter comic book, there's like 40 that are very good.
There are a few things that will always do well
Yeah.
on that. Like Big Dog Inc. will historically do well. If Zenescope runs something, it will do well on Kickstarter. But even still, it's not what you think it's going to do, and it's complicated. I have a whole class about this, guys, coming on October 5th, just to promote myself. But
Oh, cool.
talking about comic book investing and all the fun stuff, it's going to be anywhere from like 18 to 24 hours of just pure fire at the basics. Not even the complicated shit, the basics. But
Mhm.
I digress. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff, but you got that going on. And I do want to back out of this before I get us all in trouble, but I do need to show this because I think this is really cool. I am a Hot Wheels guy. This is not a Hot Wheels car. It looks like a Hot Wheels car. I'm pretty sure that's part of where the idea came from.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. So it's after the car. It's the Plymouth Barracuda that, like I said earlier, is kind of a character in itself in the story. So I thought it'd be really cool to do my own little custom here with using that Hot Wheels Plymouth Barracuda from that time period in my own little custom box there, cardboard
I
back.
wasn't even saying the car was a Hot Wheels car. I was saying the idea of just the card and the car and like
Yeah,
hanging
yeah,
out
yeah.
on
Yep,
that.
yep, yep,
It's so
yep.
Hot Wheels oriented. It's brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I thought it'd be cool, and hopefully, if I get enough backers from this, that I will be able to continue with like this with the different covers for the continuing campaigns. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I said, it's I had to order. They don't make those Plymouth Barracudas anymore on there, so the toy. So I had to order it and then had it customized for the Kickstarter.
No, it's a cool thing. I love it. I think it's funny. I think it's clever. I think that anything like that. I think that definitely in the right. I think that by itself would have been a great reward. Honestly, I
And
think
yeah, well, what happened was it's an add-on because I didn't so I moved and they were all in a box and I couldn't find the box till after the campaign went. So I ended up just you doing it as an add-on. But with issue 2, I'll definitely do something a little different, but actually have that as a reward. So
because I
that's
know
something.
people who would just want that. They don't really care about the comic. They just think
Well,
it's
that's fine.
fun.
You can just buy that. You can buy that as a and throw out the delete the PDF if you want. For all I care.
Because there are people who love toys. This
Oh
is
yeah, yeah,
technically
yep. I
only
mean, it
people
kind of
who
goes
are
hand in hand.
I mean, this is a limited toy. Is really
Yeah.
what it comes down to. If we're gonna
Oh yeah,
call
it'll
it,
only be offered on this, and that's it.
and so there you go. Maybe it'll be offered on I guess issue 2 if you have more
Yeah,
stock.
it'll be a different. It'll be if I do it, it'll be a different cover, whatever the cover is for issue 2, probably, or maybe have something created of a drawing of the card just for that. I haven't decided yet. I got enough problems just getting getting all this done with
Hey,
Alpha
I got
Dog
some
Fury.
crazy ideas for you, but I'll tell you them after because I got a good idea for you for this one. But
Okay.
I digress. We're not going to push too much further into all of this. I do want to touch a little bit about crowdfunding and everything, and I am curious where you see crowdfunding going because it is a very interesting entity right now.
Yeah.
Apparently, Packer Kid has left us. We're all alone on Kickstarter. They have decided not to back anybody's campaigns anymore.
Who's this? I didn't catch who's
Backer
this.
kit. Backer kit.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's a whole different ball game. It's like there's so much stuff going on. I am so confused on everything with Backer Kit. I don't even know what the hell happened, but they I think are starting their own. Zoop exists. There's
Yeah.
Indiegogo. There's Crowdfunder. Obviously Kickstarter. Facebook is trying to build their own. There is GoFundMe. People are doing Patreon. People are doing OnlyFans now. People are self-funding and they're getting publishing deals and then figuring stuff out later on. And then there's like 4 other ones that I can't even think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's another one that just started that was featured on a really great comic Kickstarter show podcast with Brian. Oh my goodness. I listen to him all the time. I can't recall his name. He does Comics Launch. I think that's the name of the show, Comics Launch.
You mean Tyler from Comics Drop?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So Tyler just launched one too?
No. He was talking about this new one recently on his podcast a few weeks ago. Another new one that started up. So
Because I know that Zoop started. I know that crowdfunder just started. I know
maybe
Facebook's
it is
trying.
called Crowdfunder. Yeah,
I mean, look, you know what it is? I had a whole discussion about this, and me and somebody got into a little bit of a discussion. I said, look, I don't feel comfortable on Indiegogo. It has nothing to do with politics. It's that Indiegogo's platform freaks me out. Like I find it hard to navigate, and I find it to be a very robust platform. I don't
yeah,
find it to be as simplified as Kickstarter.
yeah,
And he was saying, but that means you're not backing the book. And I'm like, but I don't feel comfortable. It's like if you don't feel comfortable going into a store, it doesn't matter if they have the world's greatest item if you don't feel comfortable going into it. But
yeah.
I digress right there. Again, this is not about me as much as it should be about you. But I'm curious your thoughts on this because obviously I've only run one Kickstarter and I had an issue with people. I don't have a problem with the platform as far as crowdfunding, but people were rather difficult during my experience, which is never a good time. But I don't have a problem with the platform of Kickstarter, but I also recognize that the more crowdfunding things you have, the more diversified things occur and things get complicated. And then if you have a great series, but I'm not on that crowdfunding platform, to get me to that crowdfunding platform is going to be a pain in the ass. And then it creates a bunch of problems. And then
No.
the E word comes up, which means exclusivity, because we've seen this with Joe Rogan and Spotify. He's not being paid $100 million because Joe Rogan is worth $100 million on Spotify. He's being paid $100 million because he's exclusive. It's the
Yeah.
same reason why Obama with Bruce Springsteen, they wanted to distribute their podcast beyond Spotify, and Spotify said, you can go do that, but we're not going to pay you.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't that they don't like Obama, it's that they wanted it to be exclusive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You're more paying so other brands don't grow, too. So
Tom
yeah,
Brady has a $238 million deal when he's done with football with Fox.
yeah,
Tom Brady worth $238 million for football analysis? Fuck no. Tom Brady's worth $238 million to not go to NBC
yeah.
or CBS or CSN,
Mhm.
whatever it is, or to go to Amazon or go to Peacock. That's why Tom Brady's worth
Oh
200.
yeah, absolutely. So
But
the good thing about more competition is that Kickstarter will probably not up their prices, their cut anytime soon with these other people growing. But it's a good thing. I have had zero luck on Indiegogo. It seems with Indiegogo, if you're not in that it crowd, then you're kind of forgotten. At least that's been my experience. Um, and I haven't looked at once. Maybe the other ones get bigger. Maybe it's something I'd look into. But I'm not going to mess with Indiegogo because, like I said,
so
I
do
got
you?
nowhere with them. So
So this is my question. Do you feel that it's actually going to lower prices? Because my experience, and look, I compete on eBay with a lot of different sellers, is that I have to have my prices have to be somewhat competitive with everybody
yeah,
else's prices when I'm
yeah,
selling something.
the way things are going up and up and up, I don't think they're going to decrease their prices anytime soon. But I don't think they're going to increase them, and it's going to be a long time before Kickstarter. It's kind of like Amazon. You don't hear about the other companies because they're their own brand, and I think Kickstarter is their own brand enough to where they're not going. I don't. It's like WWE. There can be 1,000 AEWs,
The
but
only
yeah,
competitor to Kickstarter is Indiegogo. Indiegogo is a real threat to Kickstarter because
yeah,
it has just as much weight as
yeah,
Kickstarter does. If you're in a certain crowd,
yeah.
um, or if you've cracked the code, there are people who are not in that crowd that do okay on Indiegogo.
Oh yeah, there are
Um,
people that make crazy six figures on Indiegogo. It's insane.
but that doesn't mean their book's good. That just means they know how to crowdfund.
Oh
That's
yeah,
all that
absolutely.
means.
Yeah, they get their
That's
niche
all
out.
that
I mean,
means.
it's genius. You know, God
But
bless them.
I
I wish I could
digress.
do that.
Just because somebody raises 200,000 or a million on these platforms doesn't mean their book is good. It's called Berserk. It's not a good book, guys. It's a pig in lipstick, is all I'm gonna say. And I don't think anybody disagrees with me on that one.
Yeah.
Eric July, we don't know if his book is good or bad, but I guarantee you that it's a pig in lipstick. And when you're
Yeah.
all saying, Andrew, you hate Eric July because he raised $3 million. No, I'm proud of Eric July for doing something that he leveraged his brand, which celebrities did 15 years ago with alcohol, which means he's a copycat.
Hmm.
So everybody who's proud of him and rooting for him, you're rooting for a copycat and you're 15 years late to the party. Welcome to the party. The beer's in the fridge. But anyway, I digress, and when that book is average, don't come bitching to me. So I'm going to say to everybody. I told you right from the start, you said you don't know Andrew, and you know what is, when I'm right, don't come bitching to me. You could say, you know what? I'm glad, and here's your $20 for being right. I'd be like, thank you. I'm not going to go buy myself something nice, like Eric July's book. Anyway, I
That's
digress.
funny.
One more question before I give you the ability to self-promote. Obviously, comics in the last 10 years has evolved, and I know you're new to comics, but in the last 3, it has gone through about 14 different evolutions in the last 3 years. The COVID era, in my opinion, got us to 2030 in 2020, where
I
I think
think
we
you're
were
right.
heading down this path anyway. I know that I was going to be heading down this path anyway. It just got us there about 10 years sooner. And
Mhm.
so I'm very curious how you feel it has evolved, especially because you're a new creator. I think, correct me if I'm wrong on that. You're a very
Yeah.
new creator, right?
A new indie creator. Yeah, for comic books anyway. I did screenwriting stuff, but yeah, it's only grown exponentially since COVID, and it seems to be the way of the future now. The big boys are getting into it too because people are supporting them less.
Money,
So
money. It's money because Boom Studios raises like $2 million with Power Rangers, and they could print what they need to print, and it's still stuff for comic shops, and
Mhm.
it's just they're selling direct to consumer.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what it is, and you can't hate them. I mean,
no,
they didn't deliver a shit product. It's a good product,
hmm
but
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
continue.
Yeah, unfortunately, some people look at it as a double-edged sword because you're getting more eyes on Kickstarter, but they're going to somebody else's comic book. So I don't know. I mean, you
So
just got
let me
to
ask you
do
about
your
that.
best.
I know I said one more question, but I'm going to follow up and then I promise to give you a chance to self promote. But do you, because this is also another hot topic where people say, well, if all these people like Boom Studios with Berserk and Power Rangers and even a variety of other books like Adam Lawson's Wesley Snipes book was on, they're like, oh, that's good for Kickstarter. Got more eyes on them. And and I said, yeah, it brings people to the platform, but are they going to really buy your book? And then
Yeah,
other people say, well, even if they were to come to that book, and they're looking for Wesley Snipes' book, they're not really going to buy your book anyway. But I also go to the idea saying, wait a second, money is a renewable resource, but it's not renewable the same way like energy from the sun is, meaning that if I go get my paycheck, I spend it in 2 weeks, my paycheck is going to get replenished, but I'm
yeah,
competing still. So if I only have $60 and I got to choose between book A, B, and C, I can only pick one, and that book is there. You are competing against everybody. So,
hmm
I mean, because the argument that these people are making is not necessarily foolproof. It's not 100% argument saying, well, they're still not there. If they're coming to the Kickstarter for that book, they're probably not going to buy your book anyway because they're not looking for that. But if they got to Kickstarter and that book wasn't there, would they buy your book?
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's a free market and people can do what they want. But yeah,
I'm all for
it
free
does
market.
seem kind of tough because we have enough tough time competing for dollars as it is amongst ourselves than to have some huge Hollywood entity, especially when by a lot of people, I don't know, I don't read their stuff, but I have yet to hear anybody say it's a terrific book. Some of these big name stars that are seemingly pushing some of the smaller guys out. So I mean, like I said, but it's a free market, and you just it is what it is, you know.
I think it's going to be solved because I think a bunch of people are realizing, oh shit, this really isn't that good. And
Yeah.
Ty Lopez, and I love Ty Lopez and I hate Ty Lopez, but what he said is that if you want really good business advice, it's in the corner of Barnes and Noble. It's not out on the front center of Barnes and Noble, meaning that anything that is worth value, you have to dig through, and any real comic book that is a brilliant book usually has to be dug through. It's very rare that a brilliant, game changing item is front and center. There's a book called Super Folks. Super Folks is Grant Morrison's favorite book. Super Folks is the basis for Astro City. Astro City is the basis for Tiger and Bunny and My Hero Academia. Everybody who loves My Hero Academia doesn't understand that a book in the 70s that basically didn't sell any copies is the basis for it.
Hmm. I
And
didn't know that either.
Super Folks is legitimately the greatest superhero book ever written. Nobody knows about it. And then Grant Morrison wrote the foreword to it. So if you love Grant Morrison's writing and you want to write like Grant Morrison, you need to read that book.
Hmm. I'll have to check that out. I actually, not all that long ago now, I'm not going to recall the name of the comic now. A comic I had never heard of that was Alan Moore. He said it was his favorite book, and it's takes place during the Depression. It is about basically need for unions in early 1930s. Comic book that came out in the 80s. It's basically about these guys that are this guy and this kid that live on the railroad, and the big people that they're trying to form unions, and the teams, not the Teamsters, but the anti-union people beat them up and stuff. And I right now can't recall the name of the comic book, but it's a terrific comic book that I would have never known. But Alan Moore wrote the foreword for it, and he said it was his favorite comic. So I read it, and it was actually terrific.
And this is the issue with comics, where all the good stuff, the stuff that actually will change people in the way they write and the way they function, gets lost, and then people discover it, and it's a crazy, crazy entity. But Super Folks, it is the basis for My Hero Academia, one of the top animes in the world, and will be for probably the next 30 years. And nobody who's a My Hero Academia fan knows that book. If I was running Barnes and Noble, what I would do is I would put Super Folks right next to My Hero Academia. And I guarantee you that I would sell that book like crazy. And I would push that book like crazy, because I guarantee you I would have a bunch of 16-year-olds reading Super Folks and being like, I want to write comics. I would have so many of them to sell if I was the manager. I would make that move, and I would go above corporate, and corporate would be like, we should fire you, but you did sell like 1,000 copies of this book. Like, we're just gonna give you a $5 raise. We would have given you 6, but But anyway, I digress right now. That's how I would fix that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I figured I'm worth at least that much. But anyhow, if Barnes Noble's listening to me and they want to take it, be my guest, because I want that book to sell like hotcakes. It's like 45, 50 years old. It's a brilliant book. And everybody who's listening to this, go read Super Folks. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And if you are, well, you could DM me and yell at me. But anyhow, I do want to give you a chance to self-promote, because you do have this book coming up in, I think, 10 days, or is it 9?
It's 9 days. Well, technically, it's past 8 o'clock now, so it would be 7 days. It ends next Thursday. It's I think 8 days technically right now. But so just go over, just do a search, and for Dime Store Detective, or put my name down, John Dexter, and it'll pop up for the comic. And we're at 93% funded. Hopefully, it can get pushed over the edge here over the next few days. And it's a terrific comic book. It's not like anything you've read. It's got murder, mystery, moonshiners, and evil entity. You couldn't ask for much more in a comic book. So yeah, hopefully check it out. It's going to be great.
And then obviously, I'm going to just ask you, where can people find you on social media? Because that's a big deal too. Because
Yeah.
at this point, yeah,
So you can find me on Twitter at Real Alpha Dogs or on Instagram at alpha_dogs_comic. And I'm also on Facebook. So just look up John Dexter. And if you're friends with Andrew here, then it'll probably pop up. So it's on there. I think it's like John Dexter 77 or something like that. So yeah, I'm on all over the place on social media. And if you do a Google search Alpha Dogs comic, then you'll get plenty of info about me and my first comic, Alpha Dogs. It's getting a little bit of a following. People have really enjoyed it, and it comes out October 4th on Kickstarter. I'll be doing a launch party on Philip Russert's channel. I did the same thing with Dinosaur Detective. He was kind enough to allow me to go on and pitch my comic on his Creator Con channel, and so yeah, be sure to check it out.
and then I'm just going to keep saying it. You got to support indie
Yeah.
people, indie projects. Obviously with indie content, especially with new creators and even big creators and old creators and any creators, this stuff doesn't get made without money. And so
Mhm.
that's the big deal right there, is that you have to support people and support comics financially. You're not paying their mortgage, guys, but what you are is that you're helping to make a comic happen. And as a result, you get to see that story continue, because when you are independent, money does matter. And this stuff doesn't get done without it. I'm no different. I'm independent media. And so this show legitly is self funded. And I did a Kickstarter, which really helped to cover a bunch of season 4. It covers about 8 months of season 4 till next August. And so if people want to throw me money and you want to support me and you like what this show does, you like John's comic, or you like She-Hulk on Disney, I personally don't care. I'm sure John cares that he wants you to buy his book. But all jokes aside, but in the long run, I think you agree with me that if you like something, you need to financially support it if you want to see it continue. And I'm going to say something a little mean, but I think honest, that, if you like something and you don't support it economically, and look, I'm not saying go into debt or anything like that, because we're all in different elements of that. But one of the things is that if you don't support it and then it gets canceled, or it doesn't continue, or it doesn't get done as fast as you want it to, you can't really complain because you didn't support it. And if you want it to get done and you want it to continue, you have to financially support it. As far as I'm concerned about everything that I'm doing, obviously all my social media is down below. I don't know if it's truly readable. I'm going to be working on that, but it's Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook, and Pop Anime Comics on Instagram. A lot of cool stuff's on there. It's Pop Anime Comics on YouTube. The show is Conversations in Pop Culture, so if you type that in pretty much anywhere in search bars, it will appear. And I do have Buy Me a Coffee if you would like to financially support this show. All the money does go into this show. It goes into paying StreamYard. It goes into covering other expenses. It goes into making sure that I get another season in. $1 helps. $5 helps. If you want to write me a $10,000 check, more than happy to take that too. And
Make
on
2 of them.
October 5th, I have a comic book investing class coming out. It is a big one. It's going to probably drop on Udemy first, and then it will drop eventually either on Locals or Substack or some other thing. Hell, it might be on OnlyFans at some point. But yeah, it's super cool, and it is the basics of comic book investing. So if you want to enter that realm, then that class is for you. Or if you want to just make yourself a better collector, a lot of the rules of collecting and investing are very similar, and they deviate at a certain point, but the basics are very much the same. So that's everything that I got. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show, Andrew. I appreciate it, and we'll have to do it again sometime. And thanks for supporting creators like myself. Go check out Dexter Detective and Alpha Dogs issue 3, where you can buy Alpha Dogs issue 1 and 2 as well on their October 4th on Kickstarter. So thanks again, and take it easy.
And I think that's a wrap, everybody, because I couldn't have said it any better myself.